Good morning, church. Have you ever been asked to do two things, but it seemed like they were mutually exclusive? You may be asked to start a new project at work, one that will require you to purchase new equipment, but then you're also told, we need you to trim your department's budget. You may respond with, well, I can buy the new equipment or I can trim the budget, but I can't do both. Or perhaps you need extra work hours in order to make ends meet. But then you're also asked to make sure that you don't sacrifice any quality time with your family. And you may respond with, I can work extra hours, or I can make sure that I don't sacrifice any time. But I can't do both of those. Or you've been diagnosed with elevated blood pressure, and the doctor recommends that you make multiple life changes by eating food that you hate and exercising daily, which you may also hate. But then he tells you to make sure that you keep your stress level low. You may look at him in aggravation and say, well, do you want me to stress out now because now I have to eat food I don't like and exercise? Or do you want me to keep my stress level low? You need to pick one because both of those are not possible simultaneously. It seems that we run into all sorts of conundrums like this, where we're asked to do two or more things, but we have no idea how to make more than one of those happen. Well, I've got some bad news for you. It's not really bad news, but we have things like this in the Bible sometimes, and let me give you an example. On one hand, we'll see things like this. 1 Corinthians 16:13 says this, be on alert, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong. 1 Peter 5:8 says, be sober-minded and be watchful. 1 Thessalonians 5:6 says, so then let us not sleep as others do, but let us keep awake and be sober. All of these imply that there's something out there that we have to be watching for. And oftentimes it's bad. The world, Satan, and our own sin nature sit there ready to pounce. The culture around us is becoming more anti-Christian every day. The world is full of war, famine, and disease. No wonder we're called to be alert and sober-minded. On the other hand, we see verses like this. In Matthew 6, verse 25, Jesus says, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body or what you will wear. Later in that same chapter, Jesus says, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Paul says in Philippians chapter 4, verse 6, be anxious for nothing. Jesus says in John 14:27, let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid. So, we're called not to worry about daily provisions or health or really anything. We're called to be content. So here we sit. We know the dangers of the world, and we're told to be on alert. But then we're called not to worry. Oftentimes we may sit before the Lord and say, I can be worried and alert, or I can ignore the dangers and not be worried. But I can't do both of those. However, I'm not sure God will accept that excuse. So what are we to do? I have a few suggestions. First, and absolutely most importantly, we're to remember the reason we're not to worry. If we were alone in this, then we probably should be filled with fear and anxiety, but we're not alone. In all the passages that I read above about not worrying, it gives us a reason not to worry. That is, to summarize it, we serve a sovereign God who loves and cares for us. God has it in control. Second, we're to learn to be content and to learn to better trust the Lord. Philippians chapter 4, verses 12 through 13 tells us this. This is Paul speaking. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. Whether fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want, I can do all things through him who gives me strength. So in those situations, which there will probably be many, we learn to be content and we learn to better trust the Lord. Third, we spend time in prayer. Ultimately, the battle is the Lord, so we must seek shelter in him. Philippians chapter 4, verse 6, which I read part of it earlier, but the second part of that verse says this, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. So it's not worrying. We're not told to simply not worry in a bubble, but we are to not worry because we can come before God in prayer and petition him. So we're called to watch, and we're also called not to worry. How do we do that? We trust God, we learn when He teaches us, and we pray to remain in Him. I'll be praying for you. Please pray for me. And Lord willing, I'll see you next week.